Welcome back to KMOT First News at 10. I'm John Jacqueline. After hosting an early bird meet the weekend before Thanksgiving, Minot High Boys Wrestling opened dual play tonight. Magicians hosting Williston. We start with the 127 weight class. Minot's Corbin Kraft versus Jackson Davis. Second period, Kraft opens on the bottom, quickly turns an escape into a takedown, and that takedown turns into a pin. Minot builds an 18-6 lead in the duel. Moving on to 133, Williston's Sully Krenz trails 2-3 to Caden Fillion, but not anymore. The Coyote wins by a pin. Very next weight class, the 139s, Minot's Ty Burton versus Kellen Larson. Williston racks up more points as Larson registers the technical fall. The Coyotes have a surge in the middle weights, but Minot High squeaks out a victory 36-33. Let's check out some girls basketball scores from around the region. South Prairie Max wins at Partial. Close one between Watford City and Newtown. Wolves prevail by 3 points. Then Rugby and Glenburn both notch wins on the first day of the CNDC tournament in Harvey. Meanwhile, Powers Lake, Berks Central, and Berthold out further east at the Lake Region tourney in Devils Lake. Bombers snatch that opener 69-24. Minot State women's basketball is back on the hardwood this weekend for its first games since Thanksgiving. The Beavers dropped their NSIC opener to Minnesota Crookston Tuesday, November 26th, and are still searching for the first win on their home court. The team's leading scorers Laura Dobbins and Emma Mogan outline what improvements the Beavers need to make this weekend.
I think definitely defensively. We've so far been doing really strong offensively, but our defense just needs a bit of improvement, finishing off plays, rebounding.
Once we pull ahead with the lead, just keeping that lead and not getting complacent and just keep pushing and not letting them have a chance to get back in it would be huge. We have some games this weekend that we can hopefully prove that and get a couple W's.
Minot State led at halftime over Crookston, but was outscored 28-11 in the third quarter. The Beavers' fourth quarter comeback bid fell short, and head coach Ryan Clark provided his thoughts.
It's a learning experience. It's a growing opportunity for us. We've spoken about and watched the back of what we need to improve on and work on, and hopefully this Friday and Saturday we make improvements in those areas.
Minot State hosts St. Cloud State Friday at 5:30 and Bemidji State on Saturday at 3:30. Of course, with the men's games will follow the women. We'll be right back.